On the phone we have George Robinson, Director of Development at Drexel University, and he was a former senior major gift officer at Florida A&M University. So the university
Yeah.
in question in topic, Mr. George Robinson was once working in their athletic department. So he has some good insight that he's going to share with us today. So make sure you share this with all your friends and your family members and your enemies right now, because we're about to get into this conversation. Now, back to what I was saying, week one, you had Florida A&M University traveling to Chapel Hill, North Carolina to play the University of North Carolina, the Tar Heels. And
Mhm.
reading articles and seeing things, they had looks like up to 26 athletes ineligible on the football team. And when I first read that, I said, wow, this is week one. Classes just started. How is that even possible? So I looked through the article and I see, that the classes were taking in the summer didn't equate and all like that. And they have people in charge of making sure the student athletes take the right courses. Mr. Robinson, I want to ask you, with your experience in these athletic departments, can you explain to us how this can happen in a school of the nature of FAMU, Florida A&M University?
Well, hey, it's good to be on the show. Thank you for inviting me on. I really do appreciate that. Um, One of the things is, you know, for things like this to happen, there's a communication problem issue. There's also not enough staff to be able to handle this. I mean, how people ask, well, how do 26 athletes become ineligible and the season haven't even started yet? And so how does and like you were saying, some of these kids came to FAMU or transfers. They came through the portal. Some came from community colleges or junior college. And there's a certain amount of credits, certain amount of classes that you have to take to be eligible and be in NCAA compliance. And so, you have to have people in place that have a true understanding of the NCAA rules and what needs to be done and what's required. And so when you don't have that in place, things like this happen. I mean, at FAMU, you have one compliance person and one so-called academic advisor. Now, Dr. Robinson, who's the president there, was speaking the other day and was saying that, hey, we have people in the compliance program on campus that were assisting the student athletes, but what was happening, they were giving them bad information. And so when you have people that don't work in athletics and are specifically solely athletic, things like this take place and happen. And, one of the things that hurts them is they don't have the leadership in athletics. Right now, they have an interim athletic director. The athletic director that was in place, he resigned because of some issues with the university and some things were taking place. Some contracts were told to be signed that the university was not aware whereabouts. And so now you have an interim in place and you're about to go into a season, and that person, usually is someone that's connected to the university, has worked in many areas. It could be athletics, could be something else on campus. So you're basically looking for a placeholder. That makes it difficult. It just makes it very, very difficult to, run a program and have people eligible. I mean, you can't do it with one person. It just doesn't happen. I mean, I can give you an example. If, 2 hours away at Bethune-Cookman, which is also HBCU, a part of the SWAC conference, their enrollment is just under 4,000. And they have 3 academic advisors for specifically athletics and 2 compliance officers. And you don't hear this type of stuff. That's one place. You look at Jackson State, which is one of the HBCUs that's being talked about a lot because of Deion Sanders. They have 5 academic advisors in place and 2 compliance officers in place. And you're not hearing about this stuff. And he's bringing in multiple tons of transfers. tons of new students, and you're not hearing about this stuff. So the major concern that people are talking about is FAMU and how committed the leadership is to athletics. It's just very unfortunate situation that's taking place there, and it's a bad look. At other institutions, PWIs, they've had issues and things that come up, but it's solely focused on that institution, like University of North Carolina, Maryland, a Duke or Kansas. But when an HBCU is in the news like this, it just doesn't affect just that HBCU. It affects all of them because they group us all together. That's just
Absolutely.
the landscape the way it is.
Um, in this particular situation, and we have a comment here from R. Ryan Hunter. He said, "Wow, that's half an NFL roster missing from one major game." And this was a major game. Florida A&M versus the University of North Carolina. Florida A&M has at least one NFL prospect, high NFL prospect that was deemed ineligible for this game, and like you said, it gives a bad look to the HBCUs as a whole when one messes up because it almost gives credence to the thought of why a lot of these blue chip athletes are deciding against going to an HBCU because of things like this. Let me ask you your opinion on this. Deion Sanders came into Jackson State University a couple years ago and put a lot of attention onto HBCUs. And I've personally, as an HBCU grad, I feel like it's deserved. But are the HBCUs ready for the attention that they are getting? Being that there were years and decades of not being in the spotlight and not getting the blue chip athletes and not needing to um, do not having the funds to have the staffing that they need, so these type of things that happen to FAMU don't happen. Where are the HBCUs ready outside of Jackson State and maybe Tennessee State? Are they ready for this?
Well, what I will say about that is, obviously, yeah, the fact that Deion Sanders um, came to Jackson State was a great thing because it brings a microscope to Jackson State and to HBCUs, and he's a voice, he's a marketing genius, and everything like that. But also, even in his comments, if you listen to him speak, he always talks about, we need to clean our in house. Even at Jackson State, even with everything that's happened at Jackson State and how they operate, they got a new turf practice field. They're looking to build a new or renovate their stadium. They've got uniforms. They've got some funding that they've gotten from individuals, sponsors, and things like that. There's still things on the campus that has to be handled and taken care of. Um, and the thing, to answer your questions for, are they ready? Um, in a lot of cases, I would say no. And one of the reasons is that is because number one, you have to get your infrastructure in place. If you want the exposure, you have to understand that um, there's great consequences when things happen. You're under a microscope now. So when things happen and issues like this happening at FAMU with academics, it's going to be in the news. It's on the national news. It's on YouTube. It's in everything. It's a bad look for the university, and so it's very important for HBCUs to get their house in order from top to bottom, and it starts at the leadership at the top. It starts with your board of trustees. Who are on your board of trustees? Who do you elect as president who sets the tone and puts the strategy and infrastructure in place to be successful? And they all have to follow his lead all the way down. And so when you don't have that, you're going to have some breaks in the armor, which you've seen at FAMU. And I know with a lot of HBCUs, they're underfunded. I'm an HBCU alumni graduate, and I went to Norfolk State University in Norfolk, Virginia, and so in a lot of cases, we've got to get our house in order. There's no question. I don't think we're ready for it. But if we're going to survive and make it in the next 50 years, we're going to have to, because if not, we're going to get left behind, and you're going to start seeing more depletions of other HBCUs.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you feel like this is not the first time that, or I mean, this isn't the first time, but do you feel like we could be seeing this happen more and more as the HBCUs become a little more popular with the blue chip athletes? You know, how long does that take to get ready? How long does it take to get your house in order? I mean, these are things that really, I mean, let's be honest, these things should have been going on. The house should have been in order a long time. These homes should already be in order, right? There shouldn't be a thing as we got to get our house in order. We got to. It should already be in order. You're in university. You're a place of higher education. Things should be in order. Real one another quick comment from R dot from Ryan Honey said FAMU was prepared to cash that game check, but they weren't fully prepared for everything that comes along with it. But we have to build a foundation first. Absolutely, absolutely. Miguel, did you want to chime in on this conversation? This is, I mean, when I saw this, I'll be honest. When I heard about this, my heart broke for a
Yeah.
fan because the game was like a 20-point game or so, give or take, and they were missing 26 players. Think about that. But go ahead, Miguel. I'm sorry.
No, I just hitting on that underfunding of HBCUs. I was wondering, what do you think would be a way to get? Because I know sometimes the issue is getting alumni to come back and to give back to the university. Do you see it as a low financial turnout with gifts coming back to HBCUs because of everything that's gone on in the past?
Well, one of the things I'll say is because I've worked in athletics, but I've also been a fundraiser. And a lot of times, what happens, specifically with state schools, you present your budget each year to the state. Funding for projects, renovations, new buildings, things like that, to get funding. And in a lot of states across this country, a lot of HBCUs are just underfunded. And that's the underbelly of a lot of people say just the disrespect, and just the fact that we've got to be able as a group of blacks and African Americans to come together and demand more than what we have. We've been satisfied and been quiet way too long. We're not very aggressive when it comes to asking what we want and what we need. When we put people and politicians and things like that in office, we need to demand that they do more than what their expectations to put them in office. And when we don't do that, HBCUs, don't get the funding that they need. That's one part of it. Obviously, also the other part of it is this. Yes, I mean, from an alumni perspective, our giving for blacks at HBCUs is very low. It's embarrassing for pretty much. We spend more money on hair, clothes, cars. We're one of the biggest consumers in the world, but we can't give money to our HBCUs, to be able to grow and be successful. And I'll give you an example of how the PWIs work, especially in athletics. In my experience, I worked at the University of Florida, and I worked at Virginia Tech, and these are two Power 5 PWIs, especially in athletics. At the University of Florida, to be on the waiting list, and it's to be on the waiting list to purchase or have a luxury box at Gator Stadium in Gainesville, just to be on the waiting list, not to have a box, to be on the waiting list, is $25,000 donation per
What?
year to athletics,
Wow. Wow.
just to be on the waiting
It's
list.
like those seat licenses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
huh?
No,
And
go ahead.
so,
I'm sorry.
um, you know, yeah. So you have stuff like that, and then all your season ticket holders, all these college and universities, white PWIs that These people are sitting in lower bowl seats. They're just not paying for seats. They have to pay a donation, an annual donation to the athletic department just for the rights to purchase a seat. And that seat can be $1,000 donation per seat. Now, which includes maybe parking, maybe pregame, tailgate for our donors, things like that. But they think of athletics as a business for them, and so we have to start thinking at like business. The university is a business. Athletics is a business, and you have to run your operation like a business to make money. That's what it's about. It's about making money. And so we're just so far behind with that. And so, when you have someone like a Deion Sanders at a Jackson State, and he's trying to change things, he's coming from Florida State, and he knows what it looks like. And, he's talking about, hey, we got to get people to come to not just homecoming, come to all the games. Don't come to just the classic, come to all the games. Be a supporter. We have to start thinking, to get people to start thinking that way, to run everything like a business. But to do that, you have to put people in place that are going to move institutions forward. You can't continue to keep the same old Joes at the universities and just move them around. One of the things that HBCUs is that they don't fire people; they just move them around. And just move them around. And then you see, if you look at a lot of leaderships and people in positions, a lot of that go to the HBCU, they go from one HBCU to another HBCU to another HBCU. And so, it's that cycle has got to change. We need new blood, and some of the issues that happen in HBCUs is when you have new blood, they're going to bring things to the table that people there are not used to. They're used to a certain thing all over again, doing what they normally do. When you bring somebody outsider that has no new ideas and is trying to create things, they don't like to get erupted what they're doing. And so that makes it tough. But to answer your question, you have to start running it like a business.
Man, I can't disagree with anything you said. I really can't. And being, I spent, 4+ years at a HBCU, and you can always tell where the priorities lie, and it's not necessarily always education or athletics, or it seems like it's a case by case basis, or if it is athletics, it's football or maybe basketball, or it's actually that's really it, football or basketball, because those are the money making sports. But what you just said just now, I never knew schools like a Florida University, and I'm sure a lot, Alabama's probably crazy. 20, did you say 25,000 to be on a waiting list?
Yeah. Now I don't know what it is now. But also just another thing that's big, especially for athletics, is the TV contracts.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's one of the things I wanted to ask about. The TV contracts, because that was one of the first things I noticed that I picked up on, and I guess what I say in my younger years. I'm in school watching a game between, let's say, Florida and Florida State, and it's on ESPN or it's on ABC or NBC, whatever the case may be. Notre Dame has their contract with NBC, and at the end of the game, you have Pontiac or Ford or whoever giving money to the scholarship funds, and I'm just thinking, like, why? How come that doesn't happen at a HBCU? Why don't we? How come there's no networks that will pick up these games and allow these things to happen, and so these institutions can get the money that these other institutions are getting? And that's one of the first things I picked up on. And I remember first couple years out of school, I want to say it was a football game or a baseball game, and I want to say it was on ESPN, and it was two HBCUs playing. It wasn't the Bayou Classic, but it was two other teams. And halftime show comes up. Halftime comes up. What do? They talk about the game. They show you the highlights of the game. Talk about what this team needs to do with these team adjustments and all like that. That didn't happen at halftime of this game.
The
They
band.
talked about every other game on the docket from every other school except for the game that we're sitting here watching right now. And that really opened my eyes to, the inequities, some of the disparities between these schools, and and between the PWIs and the HBCUs. RDOT put another comment up there. He said my issue with alumni fundraising, I look at it like the building fund for the black church. We give and give to programs and don't see the progress. After a while, we stop giving. And
Yeah,
it's an
yeah,
interesting
yeah.
comment. Now,
He's
I
right.
admittedly not necessarily keeping up with, let's say, my school's um, push to bring football, but I've been out of that school. We're coming up on 20 years soon, and there was a push for football then, and there's still a push for football now to bring football back. And we're talking 20 years now, and I'm sure it was a push before I got there. I don't know where it stands, but when you're 20 years out and you're still not seeing football, and admittedly, I don't know how long these things take. It kind of, you look at it like, all right, well, what are you really doing? What's going on? Like I'm seeing, you got it. There's a lot of things that go into it. I'm not going to get into it, but ain't as much as a pigskin been on the field since I left. But I'll leave it at that. Miguel, you got any last words before we let Mr. Robinson out of here?
No, thank you for your time. And one thing I did want to ask, because I'm actually a Drexel alum. I graduated. I got my master's in sports management back in 2016. So what was it about Drexel that pulled you away from FAMU?
Well, one of the things that happened, I won't get into a lot of the details. There were some things, unfortunate things that took place at FAMU, that kind of took me away. Some things took place, I'll say, that were unethical, and didn't want to be a part of it. And so my mentor who brought me there pretty much was leaving, saying, "Hey, I'm not going to get involved in anything unethical," and decided to leave the university. And so pretty much when he left, I left. Um, and it's a sad thing because FAMU is an outstanding institution. I mean, the potential of FAMU is just absolutely unbelievable, and the alumni is as strong as it is, and they love Rattler Nation loves FAMU, and it's a great place. But when those things took place, I wanted to come back home up here is where I'm from. I'm born and raised in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Um, and so my family was here, so um, it was a logical choice to come back up here. And Drexel was gracious enough to provide me with an opportunity to work at a great institution, and that's pretty much what happened.
Awesome,
Awesome.
great. Well, we're glad to have you. We're gonna have to have you back on again, man. Great insight on this crazy situation, man. So much more that goes into it, and we'll have to have you back on. I'm sure something will come up. Well, we'll have you back on, and we appreciate you joining us on the show today. And make sure you tell everybody that you were on the show and tell them where to check it out.
I will do that. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
All
Y'all
right,
take care. Have a
appreciate it.
wonderful day and great holiday weekend.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You too. Thank you
Thank you,
very
sir.
much. Thank you very much.
All
That
right. Thank you. Y'all
is
take care.
take care now.
Bye bye.
Mr. George Robinson, Director of Development at Drexel University, former Senior Major Gift Officer at FAMU, Florida A&M University. So let me go ahead and